Welcome back, everyone. As we've mentioned in dozens of previous videos, the US dollar is a red line for America, a no-go zone, if you will. Think of it like a restricted area. Do not approach. Do not film. Everyone who dared get close to the dollar has met a bitter end. Take a walk down memory lane. Remember what happened to Saddam Hussein? The whole story wasn't really about weapons of mass destruction, nor chemical or biological weapons. Even Colin Powell himself admitted this in his writings, or maybe it was in his confessions before his death, trying to clear his conscience. He said they misled the world, and Iraq was destroyed and torn apart. Why? Because Saddam decided to replace the dollar with a basket of currencies. When a country like Iraq, one of the world's largest oil reserves, decides to ditch the dollar, it must be punished to set an example. And that's exactly what happened. The same goes for Hugo Chavez in Venezuela. His end was bitter as well. Again, anyone who gets too close to the dollar faces a grim fate. Why am I telling you this? So you understand the real meaning behind Trump's recent statement. Honestly, many of our followers have asked, why are you so critical of him? Well, here you go. Trump said just 2 days ago, I will punish countries that are waging war on the dollar because what's happening is a war on the American dollar. And who is he referring to? The BRICS countries, especially China. Of course, also Russia, where Putin has repeatedly declared the need to end the dominance of the dollar. Ladies and gentlemen, the dollar is America's weapon of global control. It's how America steers the world post-World War II. With this dollar, the US has tightened its grip. When faced with a crisis, they simply use the dollar. Look at what they did over the past 2 or 3 years when inflation hit. What did they do? They raised interest rates. That's it. Raised the rates, and dollars came pouring back into America. Inflation dropped. Just yesterday, inflation numbers were down to 2.5%, after previously exceeding 10%, a level not seen in 40 years. So who suffered? The rest of the world. Dozens of countries bore the burden, but the US didn't care. Like the local bully in a village, the weak and voiceless perish. They're just tools, irrelevant to America. In short, the dollar is America's main tool for global dominance, and it's the world's reserve currency. While every country must hold reserves for emergencies, the US doesn't have to, because it prints the reserve currency itself. That's why America will continue to fight any challenge to the dollar. During the BRICS summit in Johannesburg, South Africa, member states discussed the idea of launching a new currency for intra-BRICS trade, and they've already started using local currencies among themselves. Previously, for China to import from Russia, it had to first get dollars, send them to Russia, and then receive goods, and vice versa. Now, not anymore. How much are the goods worth in China? How much are they in Russia? They just settle in local currencies, Chinese yuan and Russian ruble. The dollar has been sidelined. This obviously affects the demand for the dollar. Imagine if interest rates hadn't been raised since March 2022. The dollar would have been in crisis. So what's the current source of dollar strength? Interest rate hikes, which means once rates drop, the dollar is expected to lose value against other currencies. That's why more and more countries are seeking alternatives. What are the consequences? Devastating for the dollar's position as the world's reserve currency. At one point, the dollar made up 80 to 90% of global reserves. Countries kept dollars just in case, for rainy days and foreign imports. Now, according to IMF data, it's down to 58%. Though, to be honest, I don't trust the IMF, World Bank, or WTO, as they were all established by the US after the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1944. Anyway, this drop from 80 to 90% to 58% is real. And it's because other currencies started gaining ground. As I mentioned before the 2008 financial crisis, the euro made up over 35% of reserves. And what happened? Europe was devastated, a silent slaughter. The euro dropped from 35% to around 19 to 20% today. Go Google it. Why? Because these financial tools are the means by which global power is controlled. This is the secret of U.S. dominance, and that's why Trump is threatening again. During his term, he wielded threats and intimidation like weapons. And now? He's saying, you dare challenge the dollar? Use other currencies? Fine. I'll impose tariffs, minimum 20%, up to 60%, on imports from countries like China, especially electric vehicles and other key goods. Let's talk strategy, Trump style. This is the core thinking behind Trump's policies. His goal? To reinforce the strength of the US dollar once again. Interestingly, during Trump's first term, although the national debt increased by $9 trillion, yes, he kept printing and borrowing endlessly, his administration still managed to boost the dollar's power. For comparison, under President Biden, the national debt increased by less than $4 trillion. Right now, the total debt ceiling is around $35 trillion. If Trump returns, studies show the debt could rise by another $10 trillion before 2030, bringing it to more than $45 trillion. Will U.S. GDP reach $45 trillion by 2030? Highly unlikely. That means debt could reach 130 to 140% of GDP. But that doesn't concern Trump. What truly matters to him is preserving the dollar's global dominance, because it's the tool with which America controls the world. Imagine if countries started ditching the dollar. America would have to go back to actually producing things, like every other country. But since the dollar-gold convertibility ended in 1971, America has essentially marketed its currency instead of its industry. Remember the 2008 global financial crisis? Did the dollar collapse? No. Why? Because the same countries tied to the dollar, its servants, were the first to rush and save it, including China and other trade-dependent nations. That's why Trump is saying, I'm coming back to make you all use the dollar again. And guess what? If he returns to office, he will do it. But there will be massive global trade conflicts. No one knows how things will unfold, but it's expected that Trump's first move would be to impose taxes and tariffs of 20%, 60%, even 100% on BRICS countries that have started breaking away from the dollar. Some Arab nations are still hesitant, watching to see if Trump wins, because he enforces his policies ruthlessly. He'll clamp down on countries that try to diversify their reserves away from the dollar. You dared reduce your dollar reserves? Fine. Time to pay the price. There are no values in global relations, just interests. Trump only cares about American interests, the American economy, and the American citizen. The rest of the world doesn't matter. Unfortunately, this is the harsh truth of international politics. Some people act more royal than the king, defending injustice in the name of order. But this is a textbook case of exploitation and authoritarianism in global relations. That's Trump's real plan with the rest of the world. Bring back the dollar as king. But here's the question. Do you think China and others will surrender like before? Absolutely not. Remember how China reacted when Trump imposed tariffs on Huawei and other companies? China started selling off U.S. Treasury bonds. They still hold around $1 trillion in U.S. debt. But with rising sanctions, lower interest rates, and strained relations, China will likely continue dumping U.S. treasuries. And not just China. Russia, too, is heading in another direction. They're preparing for a post-dollar era. And what's their backup? Gold. These countries, China, Russia, India, South Africa, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and others, have massively increased their gold reserves. Gold purchases exceeded 1,000 tons last year, driven largely by BRICS nations. They're securing themselves in case of future shocks. So, what happens when China starts selling off treasury bonds? It hurts the dollar and deepens the American economic crisis. Yet, Trump charges forward, chest out, like an old-school bully. No economic reasoning. No respect for global institutions. As we've said before, international law only applies to the weak. The strong, like Trump, write and bend the rules. He talks about imposing 60% tariffs. But isn't the US a member of the World Trade Organization? Shouldn't they consult the rules? Meanwhile, developing nations stress over whether their policies comply with WTO rules. But the big powers, they don't care. They are the law. That's the Trump doctrine. And that's what he plans for the coming years. That's why I always say, strengthen the Eastern Bloc. Support Putin's and China's steps to establish balance. So when Trump returns, he'll face a new reality, one of equal partnerships. We don't hate anyone, but we demand mutual respect. We want the dollar to be treated like any other currency, like the British pound. We're not calling for the dollar's death, just for fairness. Remember, the British pound was once the world's reserve currency before World War II. And now, it's just another currency. Such are the days we rotate among mankind. Some may argue, but America will never fall. True, countries don't just vanish, but empires fall and hegemony fades. Where are the Romans now? The pharaohs? The British Empire where the sun never set? All gone. And such are the days we rotate among mankind. But don't be fooled. It won't be easy. America has built solid foundations to extend its dominance, and it will continue striving to keep the dollar on top, not just through military might or petrodollar control like in past decades. As I said in a previous video, America's last card is technological supremacy. As long as the world depends on American technology in key sectors, the dollar will remain strong. That's the final strategy. Keep technological superiority, and the dollar stays king. And such are the days we alternate among the people. The Holy Quran. Peace and blessings to you all.